Held by Marriott and Tewe, our sponsor for today. Welcome to Issues at Hand. My name is Karen Wamani. Thank you so much for keeping it Family TV. You're welcome back from Good Morning Family with Daphne and Bruno. And I'm here, of course, to make sure that we continue the conversation and especially look at sectors and how our country is doing in terms of socio-economic development, human capital development, and many other things. Of course, we need to organize ourselves, and media is one of the ways to do that. And of course, letting you know about some of the issues that are happening in the country is one way to make sure that you engage in the conversation. We have our social media platforms, that is at Church of Uganda Family TV on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube videos that we post regularly that you can follow and of course keep up with the conversation. Today I have a very special guest. She is the new appointed new chancellor. She's going to tell us about it of Church of Uganda, and of course she was here last week, but due to that appointment we had to have her again so that we honor that the Lord has done for her. Dana, you're welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. It's very good to be back.
Tell us about your appointment.
Oh wow! Right away. I left the show, and I was appointed as the diocesan chancellor of Kampala Diocese. That's as the first lady.
Oh.
The very first lady to be the diocesan chancellor, and I don't know if it's in the province, but it's possibly also in the province. It's a very humbling position. It's really the legal advisor of the church, and Diocese of Kampala oversees about 37 parishes and sub-parishes, and so it's a good opportunity, a very humbling opportunity to serve the church in that capacity. That my legal profession has gone just beyond the normal day-to-day, but has superseded to serve the church in that capacity. And so I'm grateful. I'm grateful to the church, I'm grateful to God, and I'm grateful to the diocese for appointing me.
Guys, if you are hosted on Issues at Hand, those are the blessings that come out of
of being hosted at Issues at Hand.
Yeah.
It is a
Don't
blessing.
you think so? So what are some of the roles that you have in that diocesan chancellor position?
All right. So apart from being the general legal advisor of the diocese, I oversee different things. So I can advise on matters of transaction. The church is one of the biggest landowners in the country. And so it's advising mostly on matters to do with land and how we're handling our land, how we can safeguard our land. It's advising on many other aspects, on the day-to-day running of some of the aspects, especially with the clergy, and also generally just giving different legal advice on things that come up from time to time, whether it's regarding marriage in the church or how the canons are formed, interpreted, and how we can apply them to the church generally so that we can ensure that we are both within the law of Uganda as well as serving and meeting the needs of the people and our congregation.
Thank you so much. As you can see, our topic is the role of women in leadership, and of course she is here as a new leader of the church, and I'd like to start with the land law. Recently, as at a send-off of Bishop the Right Reverend Luwaira of Namirembe Diocese, and I noticed that there are very many land wrangles in the Church of Uganda, and I'd like to ask you, first of all, what is land law before we get deep into the land of the church and how to handle it?
Land law is the type of law where the statutes are made or the laws are made to govern the tenure system in Uganda. Uganda is a very difficult country because it has various tenures, and you can have, by tenures I mean the different types of land. So you have freehold land, you have Milo land, you have leasehold land, and you have customary land. The technicality with Uganda is that you can have more than one type of tenure existing in a land, especially for the Milo system in Buganda, where you have Chibanja occupants on a Milo title, and sometimes because their rights crisscross, a Chibanja holder is somebody who just owns what's on the surface or the top of the land, and yet the Milo owner is the one with the title. So you have two interests on the same property, and they're competing interests. You have noticed that many times people want to go back and repossess their land, especially Milo owners, because they have the title. And when they find Chibanja holders, squatters on the land, the law requires that they compensate them before they can remove them. And so the tenure system of Uganda is spread out in those four. You have the Milo, as I've spoken about, you have the freehold, you have the leasehold, which is also common, and also that came a lot from departed Asian property or public land and how land was given. And then you also have the customary tenure, which is found in the larger parts of our country. Things such as the northern part, the eastern part, customary tenure. It doesn't necessarily have title, but it can be registered with the district. And so the tenures, the system of law in Uganda is such that the law provides for all this existence of these tenures, and people own them, some of them in succession, some of them as a community, depending on which type of tenure that you're looking at.
Okay. What is the difference between these four types of land that you've mentioned? Who can have them?
Okay, so the Milo is mostly found in the central. It came from the king owning land, and so the king gave to other people. With the coming of the British, there was land that was allocated to the Kabaka and different people. So there's Kabaka's land where the Kabaka owns, and he gave to his regents and gave to different people. So you would find bits of Mukono, and a lot of people have sit on what you call Kabaka's land. But Milo tenure widely means the mile that somebody owns, and it's given as a title to the different people who are able to now hold title in succession, meaning that I, Diana, can have a title registered in my name, and then I pass it on to you, Carol, and pass it on to somebody else. I pass it on to a child, I can sell it, or if I pass on today, it goes down to my beneficiaries. So that's mostly found in this type of this part or this region of Uganda. The problem with it is that you have very many competing interests. You can find what you call chibanja holders, people who own the surfaces I've spoken about. And so because some people own a lots of pieces and parcels of land, you have many people who are squatters on your land and you haven't dealt with them. Then there's the freehold. The freehold is also similar to Milo, but you also have your own title. It's found mostly in the east, a bit of other parts of the country, and the freehold title also is the same. You can pass it on to somebody else. Each of them has the advantages and disadvantages. The thing about freehold is that you can give out a lease to somebody, you can give out those different aspects to different people. A leasehold title is usually what people acquire. Some people, especially now, church leases out their land because church is vast. And a lot of church land has been acquired because families gave, because government gave, because people gave over the years to different people. So church is one of the biggest holders of land. But you see, church also needs to develop this land and work with this land. And usually they will lease it out to different people. They will lease it out to investors. They will lease it out to even families. I know some families who are on family, who are in land. And so it's important that that the leasehold that when they lease it out to you, you are just taking it as time for a certain period of time. So you're taking it for a period of time where it says like maybe 1 year to 49 years or 1 year to 99 years. And so you're able to stay on that property as a leasehold owner for that period of time. So it's limited, and you can renew that lease, or you can actually terminate that lease and the owner enters onto the property. And then customary tenure is found mostly in the north, and a bit of the east and different other parts. Now they don't have title, so it's different, and it's owned communally by everybody. So if we have family, you will find that many families that are centered one with another will have a whole huge parcel. So you'll have a whole acres of land and you own it as a family. There's no single person that owns it, and so you can't pass it on. The father can say,
sell it.
no, you can't sell it, because the family has to agree. And so that's usually registered by the district, but it's rarely been registered. It's just a new thing that people are trying to catch up with.
All right. About the leasehold, what if the owner dies and other people, maybe the beneficiaries of the owner, didn't know that he had leased it out to you? Then what happens in that case?
The leasehold has title. And it's also registered in the lands office. You will always find it. It's similar to everybody. Now, title is the thing that safeguards somebody from ever intermeddling or dealing with the land. So whether you're the lessor or the person who's leasing out the property, there will be a title. It's just comes as an encumbrance on somebody else's title, or it shows that it exists. So it's a title created, and you will find it in lands office. If you do a search, you will find it in the person's property when they have passed on, and that's it's unlikely that it can be taken over. It's just that at the point when the lease terminates, means the years run out, then the title reverts back to the original owner.
Okay. Do you believe in the norm that it is only men that are supposed to own land? It was there in 80 years, but some of these people are still taking, the people in the villages are still taking it as far as, okay, that's my daughter, but I will not give her land. I will only give the boys. Do you believe in that kind of thing?
No. For two reasons. One, the law provides for women to also own property. The Constitution provides that even the women are entitled equal opportunity for the women to own property. But more than that, even families, in regards to succession, a father can will land to his daughter, married or not. Widowed or not, can will. As long as you are able to ascertain that you are the owner of the land, you then can will the land to your daughter. Do you remember the scripture where Zelophehad's daughters, he delivered only daughters, and when they were distributing land in Israel, and the daughters, there were 5 daughters, and they had no son, and so they went to Moses and said, our father had no sons, but in the inheritance, we have to take a piece, or our father's name would die out. And Moses went to God and said, what do I do? And God says, they are right. Give them a portion of land. And so if God himself give to the women, what makes anybody think that they shouldn't do so? But the laws of Uganda provide that also women are entitled to the property. Now the difficulty comes in when people have been widowed, because the culture, you have two competing things. You have the culture of the country and of the nation, as well as you have the law. Most people, I walked in an area in the larger Buganda corner, Wakiso, where most people, when the husband dies, they chase away the wife and the children, saying you don't have a part. You do remember that she has also left her home, where they're also saying she does not have a part. So you're causing people to be destitute. And yet, by law, as long as a woman is legally married to a man, she and the children, they're entitled to the property. And so if I am married to a man today legally by law, the marriages that are recognized in the society, even if he passes on today, I am entitled to that piece of land. I am entitled to the matrimonial property. I am entitled to everything that we obtained together as a husband and wife. Similarly, even if I got married and left my father's home, it does not matter. As long as my father wills me property and allows me to own that piece of land, I cannot be just because of culture. Whether I am married or unmarried, I am entitled to the property at home as long as my father wills that property to me. So no, the notion that women should not own is a cultural concept that has distressed us as a society. You're creating a lot of children who have no homes. You're creating women and leaving them unempowered. It's why we see many women on the streets. It's why we see them doing the local small businesses that cause them to live from hand to mouth. It's why people are suffering day to day. And yet women are one of the biggest contributors to economic development. And so it's important that the security of land and the security for tenure is looked at critically for women, especially those who are married, especially those who are unmarried and they're at their father's homes, such that the brothers or men in that family are well aware what the law provides and they're able to deal with them and give them what belongs to them.
So if somebody got married and the husband, for example, died, what should a woman do to claim the property? And also, is the family of this man also involved in the property, or is it fully supposed to be for the wife?
So the succession law, or what we call the Succession Act in Uganda and estates, provides a way in which property is distributed when somebody is legally married.
Okay.
When they're legally married, the law recognizes, I think, about 5 marriages. So there's the church marriage, there's the Muslim marriage, there's the customary marriage, there's the Hindu marriage, have I said the Islamic marriage? So all those marriages are recognized by, I mean the civil marriage. All those marriages are recognized by law. Each of them differs. I mean, Muslim, you can marry up to 4 if you're able to love them.
And provide.
Yes, and provide for them in the same measure. The customary marriage is potentially polygamous, so that means the man can marry up to how many that he wants. The civil and the church means it's monogamous, so you cannot marry anybody after them. Now, as long as you acquire any status in any of these marriages, you become entitled to property. Now, there's property that the law recognizes as matrimonial property. Usually that's the home that they have stayed in and built in as their home, not rented. As long as they have stayed in and built in their home, that's usually matrimonial property, and it's not distributable when the man passes. So the surviving spouse is usually entitled to stay in that property, and children who are of minor age or dependent relatives, people who are closely connected to you, such as fathers. You're taking care of a father, you're taking care of somebody who is connected to you in terms of blood lineage. So they will be entitled to that. So by law, as long as there's a matrimonial residential holding, it's not distributed. There are things that you may have acquired together during the subsistence of the marriage. You may have acquired other property, other lands, other machines, things that have helped you in your marriage. You may have gotten apartments that you have built together. You may have a farm where you do all these things. Now, the law provides a certain level of distribution and the way it's distributed. So if someone dies intestate, that means they had no will. That's when that law is invoked. And so you're able to distribute according to the measure that's given in that law if they died intestate without a will. However, if they died with a will, you distribute the property according to the will. So usually when somebody dies, what they do to obtain that property, if you die intestate, the administrator general becomes the one that's in charge of that property. So they'll go through a process of having family meetings, meeting the district officials, meeting the people who are involved. They'll be granted after the meeting a certificate of no objection, taken to court, and later on granted what we call letters of administration. So to people who will now execute the will of the family. Okay. If you left a will, and which is really advisable, especially for people who have property, and especially if your family is quite a turbulent family, it's important that you leave a will where you are saying what is it that you want. How do I want to distribute my property? I give my clothes to so and so. I give my car to my son. I give my land in another area to this brother. I give my particular land to the church. All that needs to be reduced into writing. And so after that, when the will has been, when you find the will, you take it to the courts of law, and there will be a process, a longer process. And after the end of that process, usually in the will you have named who you want to be the executor of your estate. And so they will go to court, be identified as the executor, and then they're able to carry out your will to the dot. So that's the simple way in which it's done.
All right. And so which land is buyable? You mentioned about 4 types of land.
Yes.
Which land is buyable? If I wake up in the morning, I say I want to buy land, which one is favorable for buying?
Land, the way land is in Uganda is that you need to search, have a search before. And searching is not just doing a search in lands registry. It's going on ground, having a talk with the local chairperson, having a talk with the members that surround, because you have to ascertain, is the person who appears on the title the right owner? Unfortunately for us, many people can forge titles and pretend that this is the title. But you need to know, first of all, does the title exist? Who is registered on the title? Is it the person selling it to me? I do a search in the village. I talk to the LC. I talk to the neighbors. I talk to everybody involved. I go to land's office and do a search. Is the name that they have been given on the title, does it also reflect in the lands registry? If it reflects in the lands registry, I have a good sense that I am dealing with the rightful person. And then of course nowadays they do the TIN, the national ID, and all these things to safeguard anything that is happening. And if you're able to ascertain and do what you call a due diligence, you are able now to agree and enter into a sale agreement. So you agree together, but you must, I think the critical thing is to ascertain who is selling the land to you. It's good to buy land that is titled. Land where you have Milo, freehold, even leasehold. If leasehold, you just have to check that they're allowed to sublease it to you. But as long as land is titled, you are safeguarded in buying that land, because it becomes an interest that cannot usually be evoked. However, if you buy a chibanja, what are you buying? You're buying the top, the surface, the crops, the house. That's not something that's going to last for you. So it's something I would never really encourage people to do. I would say go more for titled land, and you must check that the proprietor is the right proprietor and has good title to pass on to you. Because as long as they have good title to pass on to you, you are safeguarded and secure. But that due diligence is very, very critical, especially in this season and in this time.
What do you think of government coming up with, for example, if there's a land title, it has maybe a chip or something that can show that it is not forged? Because forgery of land titles has become too much. So what do you think of government coming up with such measures?
I think the lands office has been trying, or the lands ministry has been trying to safeguard, and because especially if you're nowadays going to say to transfer land, they ask for the buyer and seller to appear physically.
Oh.
They ask for them to appear physically. There has to, even if you are passing on something to your child and you're saying I did not sell it, because usually a sale agreement is attached for them to look that you paid URA, stamp duty, and all these things. Now, even then, they ask you also to have an agreement showing that you passed it on, so that they can assess. I think that they have done a lot of measures to safeguard as much as possible, and it's good that they are doing that, because the fraudulent systems that are taking place are quite high, and you'd find a lot of the people who are fraudulent are working within the lands offices, and you can be deceived because they will ask you if you look lost how they can help you, and when they help you, you will find that and things haven't worked well. We still do have a challenge. I must admit, I was in the lands office sometime recently, and I was asked to pay a certain amount of money for work that's not supposed to be paid for, and I was very concerned. And I've said it's become the trend. It's really become the trend.
You paid?
No. No. I usually tell the client, this is what it is. Go and have a conversation with them. But I think that the government needs to clamp down a lot, because it's becoming expensive for people and ordinary people to transfer land. So a woman in the village who has no idea about the land system, remember, she has to hire a lawyer who's not cheap. And from hiring a lawyer that's not cheap, now she's entering extra expenses. A person who has just been widowed and her husband was the only one on the land title. Now she's passing on the title to herself, and then she goes and she's dealing with the loss and dealing with everything that is happening, especially settling matters of the estate. She goes to an office where she has dues to pay to the government, but then she's now asked to pay an extra amount of money to have her title processed. I think that that's something that government needs to deal with severely, because we are frustrating the ordinary people. We are telling them that access to justice is impossible, and access to justice has got to be possible for everybody in this country. Otherwise, we are creating a system that causes many people to be locked out, and creating an income gap and a class gap that is unnecessary.
Okay. Let's look at divorce. Of course, divorce is not seconded by God, but it happens actually, and we can't avoid the issues that come with it. So you are married to someone, and they decide to divorce you. What is
hopefully not me?
No, not you. Of course, not you. Or if you decide to divorce them, okay.
Hopefully not better? Me. None.
Okay. Whoever is going to divorce,
yes.
Between those two divorcees, what are the procedures of keeping property in case they have some? Because I've seen cases where someone divorced a person, and then that woman went away with nothing, and we're looking at the role of women in leadership, and you are one of our leaders. So I don't know if you can answer that question.
All right.
But you're not divorcing, don't worry.
Divorce is a technical thing because the court is deciding many things. If there are children involved, they're deciding custody of the children. What is it going to look at? Is it going to be shared custody, or it's going to be sole custody? Mm-hmm. Do we share how we look after the children? You're also deciding on what is it called? You're deciding on paying off the other spouse monthly income to sustain them at a level that that they have been at, so that they will not become destitute. Then you're also coming around and deciding on property. Now, all of those are messy. All of those are very messy processes. Mm-hmm. Custody of children is always very, very tough, because the court decides on the best interests of the child. Mm-hmm. Then you also for property, any property acquired before the subsistence of the marriage belongs to the person as themselves. Any property acquired after the subsistence of the marriage, case law now says, as long as you can prove that you had a contribution towards it. Now, how to quantify that proof is where the problem is. If I can prove that when we were building our property, especially land that's not the matrimonial home, I was supervised the construction, I bought a bag of cement, I did something, as long as I can prove, even if a woman is not working, but she stayed home as a wife and she was able to make sure that there was sustenance in the home, it looked well, the children were well fed. Courts have interpreted that as a contribution towards the home. And so what a court will look at, especially when it comes to divorce and separation of property, it will first of all look at property where you have your names are jointly on that property, and then divide it according to that. The ones where it has one person's name, they will look at contribution you made towards that, and then give you a portion that is due to you. So property, that's how property works and what it looks like.
Okay. The people in this room are not married, so there is not any divorce going to happen. So let's first clear that. But let's move on to another. Before we go for a short break, I'd like to ask, you mentioned at the level where the spouse has been at. For example, if I'm a slave queen and I've been spending a lot of money, you mean court will tell my ex-husband to give me the same amount of money I've been spending?
So it's really dependent on the grounds of divorce. Yeah. So grounds of divorce are provided for by law, and the law states certain particular things that lead to a divorce: adultery, cruelty, abandonment. All those are grounds for divorce. Now, if the person who is being, or the person who, say for example, it's me who. Hopefully not me, God forbid. But say take an example where the husband has cheated, and so I initiate the divorce, and so there has to be a payment made towards me to ensure that I am able to sustain myself. It's calculated in such a way that they also take into consideration what I will need to basically survive. Yeah, what I will need, as if I took on the children, what do I need to survive as a basic? And they take into account his salary, his earnings, and everything. Okay. So, and even your lifestyle, and how much you can sustain. So courts will not make it unfair to the person because you have a certain lifestyle that you want to live. It's really your basic survival.
Okay, thank you. Is that does child support come in there as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Before we go for a short break, still, can you first tell us, if the lady bought land, if the land is for the woman, does she then share it with the man after divorce as well?
And it's in her names alone. Did the man make a contribution?
No.
See, you are to say no. So I think if the land is totally in your names and someone did not make a contribution, it belongs to you. But if they made a contribution towards it, then you're bringing all the property together and then dividing. The point is to prove what contribution you had towards acquiring that property.
So these things of, like, the woman has her own land, as long as the guy didn't contribute, the woman can keep her land without divide or property, not even only land.
It's a more technical process, because court looks at different things to allow, because remember, there are children to take care of. Hopefully there are children to take care of in this thing. Where there are no children involved, it's much easier, but where children are quite involved, it is difficult. And so the court will make a decision based on the contribution made towards it. But normally it's taken that if land is in your name, it belongs to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We are still with Council Diana Angwech, the new diocesan chancellor for Church of Uganda, Kampala. We will be talking about that later. But for now, we're going to go for a short break. We are powered by Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe. And when we return, we look at things like human rights, succession law in detail, estate law, and very many other laws. Stay with us. We shall be right back. Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe, comfort and luxury at its best in case you want to take your family out for a day of fun and, of course, activities that are soothing to the soul and to the physical body as well. I'm talking about swimming, health club like the gym, sauna, steam bath, as well as other activities. If you want to eat in, they do have a very beautiful buffet and some nice rooms where you can sleep at the end of it all. That is Protea Hotel by Marriott Entebbe. We're back with the issues at hand. I'm still with Diana Angwech, and we are discussing the role of women in leadership and management. We have not got to the management part, but we're still in women in leadership, and I'd like to start by applauding Parliament, because while it has legislated on various issues to address women's rights in Uganda, violence against women and children has remained a serious problem. And similarly, in spite of affirmative action, the social environment does not adequately support the promotion of women's rights. Now, women's rights are part of human rights, I believe, and that's where I would like to start from. I would like to pose a question and ask, what are human rights, and how does a layman out there understand human rights?
Human rights is really about the rights. I can't explain it any other way. The rights that are given to a human, they are accrued by nature. The Constitution just documents them down. There's a question in Campus that asks, are they rights because they're documented or because they exist by nature? Particularly in Uganda, what you call Chapter 4 of the Constitution is where you have the entrenchment of our rights and what people are entitled to. And so Chapter 4 of the Constitution of Uganda will provide for you what you will normally have termed as a human right. So there are things and entitlements given to people by the mere fact that they are human. So you have a right to life, you have a right to privacy, you have a right to association, you have a right to food, to water, to sanitation, you have a right to equal opportunities. All those can be regarded as human rights.
Okay. And how do we go about getting equality? Because you've heard of this thing that some Ugandans are more equal than others. And so how do we make sure that a person down in the village who has nobody to fight for them also accesses human rights or also accesses equal rights like others?
I think the bigger term you're looking for is what you call access to justice.
Okay.
Access to justice is in the sense that everybody has an opportunity to apply to a court of law, be heard, and been given a fair hearing, and they're able to receive justice at the end of the day. The biggest and easiest playing field has become the legal aid space. Unfortunately for Uganda, it has been shrinking in the last couple of years. But the legal aid space is where people give free legal services to people who are vulnerable, who are marginalized, and who are impoverished. And so that will work for the woman who is in the village or even the outskirts of Kampala. Nowadays, the sad thing about Uganda is the rich and poor live side by side. The middle class, which was slowly becoming and growing as the middle class, is slowly depreciating to the poor bracket. COVID really ensured that it separated or caused many of us to drop into a bracket that we were not in before. And so you have majority of Ugandans living from hand to mouth. If their salary doesn't come this month, the chances of their survival is almost nothing and negligent. And so how far is that from the poverty line, which is, I think, $1 per day? And so what what you do if you want to achieve equality is increase what you call access to justice. Legal aid is one of those big spaces, because when you have lawyers that are providing free legal services, whether it's advice, it's representation, or it's research for somebody in the village, you're able to give them an opportunity to be heard before courts of law, an opportunity to speak up on their case, and then an opportunity to get justice. That means that all factors need to be constant, and courts need to be dispensing justice regardless of who is standing on the other side of the table or the dock. And so legal aid is one of the places that helps achieve equality. The other one is really government policies that help people. I think you've recently heard of the parish model, which is structured to help people get out of poverty. Before that, there was what we had NADS at some point that was giving to people who seedlings so that they can farm and plant, because we're such an agricultural society, and so that we have vast pieces of fertile land, and the encouragement for people was that they would be able to plant crop and earn a reward from it, not just feed their families but earn a reward from it. And so government policies that are being set should be geared towards reducing the gap, especially for those that are marginalized, the vulnerable, and impoverished.
Okay, and Uganda has had a very big problem. The violence against women and children, which remains a very serious problem. Any advice on how it can be? I'm not even going to ask you what you think of it, but any advice on how it can be handled?
I think it starts with the actors who are supposed to safeguard. I did a case where somebody came to my home on a Sunday, and they had been abused by their husband. He had tried to strangle her. And it was Sunday, and so we drove to the local jurisdiction where they should have had the case. And the police told us they did not have PF3 forms. Now, these are forms that are given out by police to go to a doctor to examine, such that they can prove this in court. And so we drove to another police station and they were closed. We drove to another police station and they told us they cannot deal with it. And we were coming down the line, and it was sad to see that somebody was in desperate need of help, and the people who were meant to stand up and protect them were not helping them. And so it became really difficult for me to do my position, to do my role. And in the end, we were told to photocopy the form and bring back the form so that someone else who's coming after can have the form. This would not happen in a more developed country. And I think it's such an indictment to all the actors that are meant to safeguard. The police should be the first hand. When we arrived at the doctor for that case, instead of examining my client, he asked her, "Did you abuse your husband? Did you fight with your husband?" It was very distressing. Someone has gone through something that's extremely traumatic. You would expect a bit more sensitivity from the doctor examining, from the police to be present, from the child protection officer to be present. There were children involved, and it's important that everybody that's meant to safeguard, everybody that's meant to rise up and protect our society is doing their job. And so how do we improve this access, especially with violence against women? It has got to start with the police and how they take their job seriously. They refuse to record domestic violence cases. They refuse to record many cases because, partly in their defense, women change their minds after 4 days. When the trauma seems to be ceasing or the emotions of the moment cease, women will come and say, "Okay, so you arrested my husband, there's no food at home, you let him go." And that's been the trend that has happened to us as a country. But you see, it's because the women are not economically empowered to take care regardless of whether the man is present or not. So the police need to take this with the seriousness that it deserves, because the point of the police is to curb crime, and curbing of crime, and one of the reasons you curb crime is to prevent a reoccurrence. And so police need to step up and do their jobs diligently and with all effort. That does not take away from the community and the people involved. I will not talk about the victims or the people involved, because there's a lot to deal with there. But the community should also have how they have watchdogs and people who are around to be able to protect people when they're going through something that is violent. Many of us here people being beaten, and all we can do is keep silent in our homes. Nobody says anything. We'll just go and talk about them. That couple, they fight a lot in the night. But nobody did anything when they were fighting. Nobody knocked on the door. Nobody called the police. Nobody did anything to safeguard. And later, when someone's life is taken, we have eulogies and people are saying they should have walked away. They should have done all these things. The other, which is important, is to empower women as much as possible. Empower women because they nurture the children, girl or boy. Empower women economically, however small. Give them, I will always advise women, do a small business as much as possible. Don't sit at home. I admire ladies who walk around selling bananas, who walk around selling these different things. And I made a vow that I would never negotiate the price that they give me, because I don't negotiate for a supermarket. Why am I negotiating for this woman? And so I made a vow with myself that I will not negotiate. If she tells me bananas are this much, I will buy it at that price. If she tells me mangoes are this much, I will buy it at that price, because she needs it. And we are
it's not
empowering.
even expensive usually.
Yeah, and we are empowering them. Of course, at Ugandans, we've been told to bargain a lot. But as much as possible, these women are doing their best. And whether you agree with it or not, it's important that you are empowering them, you are working with them. There should be small organizations, circles formed amongst them, things that promote them and help them stabilize themselves economically. Because a woman that is empowered will rarely stay in a situation where her life is at risk. The cases I've had to deal with where women's lives are at risk are because the women are not economically empowered to do the right thing. And so the result of that is that they lose their lives. In fact, they may lose the marriage or lose the children. You know, women who are kicked when they're carrying children usually lose those children. And so when you talk to them, you'll find that their fear of walking away and standing alone is what keeps them bound in this situation. Church too should come in and open a space to deal with matters of abuse and violence against women and children. If we always have targeted ministries in church towards the youth, towards the widows, towards these different people, we should talk about these things. Now church is responding to LGBTQ, and yet we also need to respond to violence against women and children.
Nice, thank you so much. I don't know if I should ask you about the human rights at work, where the wage difference between men and women is very unequal in most cases. What do you have to say about that, briefly?
Uganda has no minimum wage bill, and it's difficult because of the kind of society we are. We are a cash society, and you cannot force an employer to give what they are not earning or what they are not bringing in. And having been an employer myself, I understand the dynamics that come in. For women and men, I can say it's the bargaining power. It's the bargaining power. Most women do not know their value and their worth. When a man walks into an interview room, he will set a price that is outrageous. And they will look at him, at his confidence, at his valor. They will calculate that he's probably not going to go on maternity leave. They will calculate that he's probably not going to be absent from work. But the thing about a man, they will say he's probably not going to last as long as a woman. And so they will gauge from that and say, in our business, do we need people that are present? Do we pay people for maternity leave? What does it look like? And so because of the confidence of men, because of some of the advantages they have, because of the fact that they are men and their physique, they will set a price, and more likely than not, they will get that price. Women are quite shy. I've interviewed women and they say, you give me what you want. That is a disservice to yourself. It's a disservice to your parents who took you to school. It's a disservice in every way. And so we need to empower women where they're confident enough to walk into a place and say, this is the amount that I want because I am worth it and what I desire to get. And so usually I teach women, for those who at least that I've been able to interact with, I learned this from a gentleman and a mentor before, is that you never just stick on one price. You give a range and you back that range by showing your value.
Thank you so much. Lastly, maybe what are you going to do in your new office? What are some of the things you're going to start with sorting here and there in your new office? And then you'll tell us about the Alabaster conference, lastly.
All right. Well, the office by nature of itself is that the work comes to you. It's not, you do not
look for the work.
You do not look for the work. You don't do anything. So I think I hope that my biggest contribution to church will be to bring both the spiritual aspect and the legal aspect and give direction in such a way that both of them are achieved. It's more than just being a lawyer, because some situations cannot be resolved by law. They are resolved by being sensitive in the spirit. They are resolved by human personality. So rather than holding on, lawyers like to hold on to the hard position, but it's important that when you're willing to break and negotiate certain things, it will be easier than going to courts of law. My contribution is to bring both the spiritual aspect and the legal aspect and giving the best of my ability.
Okay, Alabaster Conference.
Alabaster Conference is happening on Friday, the 4th of August, and it starts with a night of glory. It's a women's conference, the annual women's conference that's had at All Saints Cathedral. I have the privilege to be the founder and the chairperson, and we're starting with a night of glory. So it's an overnight, and we invite all women. For Friday, all men. There's a teen session. That means all parents with teenage daughters. Teenage daughters. We talked about abuse the last time. So teenage daughters are encouraged to come from 3 to 6 p.m. on Saturday, and then throughout the week on Monday to the next Sunday, we'll have sessions running in the morning, in the afternoon, but concentrated at 5:30 physically at the cathedral. Our theme is the unshakable, and we want as many women as possible to come. We invite you and many other women to come.
Thank you so much. I hope my schedule will allow me to be there, but unshakable, as you've had it, is the theme, and I'm sure very many people are going to turn up, including Family TV. I may not personally be there, but the TV will be there. Okay. But I'll be. Who knows?
There's an online option.
I will attend that.
There's an online option, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for being with us and giving us your time. We do thank you so much for always heeding to our call. And we are going to call you back. Of course, it's a very big topic. We've not even handled half of it. So you'll have to come back. Thank you so much for being a part of Issues at Hand. We are continuing the conversation on our social media platforms. That's at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Church of Uganda Family TV, where the conversation will be going. We are powered by Protea Hotel by Marriott. My name is Karen Omani. Thank you so much and have a good day.